Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome back to the NOFO Live Podcast, where I, 𝗬𝗍, along with my co-host Tracy, we hop on every Friday and talk about all things North Fork. I was going to say celebrate all things North Fork, which is true, but I am so excited that spring is here. I know I mentioned this last week, but the fact that it's staying, it has been super warm. I feel like I need to dig out all my colorful clothes. The cherry blossoms are just bursting with joy. I am lucky enough to have some in my backyard. So between the pink magnolias and the cherry blossoms, everything just seems so happy and so wonderful. And it's crazy how things could change in a week, because less than a week ago, it was bitter cold and still windy and all. And we are moving into the not yet peak season on the North Fork, but definitely the pretty season on the North Fork. So we're excited. I believe there is a cherry blossom festival. It might actually even be this weekend. I'm not sure, but I will see if I can post the link to that. I see Chris, but I can't. Hold on. I don't see Tracy either. So I'm just trying to see what is going on. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Good morning.
Good morning.
I didn't even see you, and then suddenly you were on.
Yes, I know that was weird.
How are you?
I'm good. It's such a beautiful day.
Are you starting to breathe that maybe this weather is here to stay?
I mean, yes,
I mean, I guess
I am.
we're afraid to say it. Just a quick thing. Chris, I do see your request, and I'm also sending you a request to join, but for some reason, it says you're unable to join. So here's what I would say. Either very quickly update your Instagram app, or power off your phone, give it the 30 seconds, power it back on, and then request to join. Sometimes our guests have a problem joining, and I don't know if it's because the Instagram app is older. Anyway, I was going to talk about the North Fork Arts Theater. Yes,
Yeah.
right? That we're going to there. They have a documentary.
Center. It's center.
Right,
North
because there's also the community theater. That's why I get confused
Yeah.
with the two. But there's a lot of beautiful stuff going on. There is a documentary called Bonnie that they're showing this weekend, which both of us are going to go try to catch and see. And it always makes me smile when you can find time out to do fun
it's
things.
It's funny because this morning I was thinking to myself, who do I think I am that I'm going to take a night off to go do something? It's like, it just depends on the hour that you ask me. Like if I'm in a mood where things are moving, I'm like, yeah, I could do it. And then all of a sudden, if it's like, how am I going to get all this done? I'm thinking to myself, why did I say I was going to do that? But I'm always glad that I said yes and that I took that time out for myself.
Well, you have a lot going on while we're waiting for Chris. I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about that, because there's Chris. Well, you made it.
Hey. Thank God. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
So what did you have to do? Update the app or turn off your phone?
I turned off my phone because my app was updated. I couldn't figure out what was happening.
We discovered that after 2 or 3 guests having real problems. There was one that couldn't get on for the entire half hour, and she was so sad.
I thought that was going to be me.
Yeah, well, so now that's why I asked which one, because then we know which one to tell.
Which one worked? Yeah.
Turn the phone off. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this, and I'll tell you, I'm I'm mostly a listener. I'm less of a talker, so this is an unusual format for me. I'm usually the one doing the interview rather than being interviewed. So I may be fumbling through a few answers, but I'll do my best.
Well, that's all right. We like to flip the script a little bit, so it's
Beautiful.
nice to have you on. Tell our audience who you are and what you're doing, and then we'll jump in.
Sure, absolutely. I'm a longtime reporter. I've been working at this business for about 35 years, most recently at Suffolk Times Review Media Group. And I'm here to announce with you great people that I'm starting my own news website. It's called the North Fork Sun, and it's going to be live in about 2 weeks.
That is
and
so exciting.
Well, first of all, you don't even look 35. So for you to say that you've been doing this for 35 years, so I was like, wait, did you start when you were 2?
Yeah. It was early. It was right out of college.
Wow.
Right out of college.
Okay. So let's start with how did you get into journalism?
Sure, absolutely. Well, when I came out of college, I wanted to be a novelist and I wanted to write for Esquire magazine. I wanted to be a long form magazine reporter for a
Okay.
long time. And at that time, in the early 90s, you could still do that. You could still make a lot of money doing long form, profiles and stuff for magazines and stuff. And
Yeah.
I wanted to do that, but I couldn't get into it because I had no experience. So I started Pike going door to door. I tried to get jobs everywhere in Boston where I went to Boston College and I graduated there. And I ended up at this little magazine. It's like this little alt weekly called The Improper Bostonian. And that's where I really got my start. My first
In Boston.
in Boston, yeah. My first story was like a one paragraph Van Morrison album review. And I was so
How cool
nervous
that
that
you remember your first
of
story.
course, I remember my first story, but I stayed up literally all night, pacing the floor, working on this story. And I called my editor at dawn and I said, I can't do it. I'm not ready. And she laughed and she said, Chris, just bring your story in. I'm sure it'll be fine. And they published it and they really liked it because I'd been answering phones there for 6 months as an intern and wanted to get more writing. So once I did the Van Morrison album review, the one paragraph, they started giving me other assignments and pretty quickly there was a Saturday morning where the head writer was out sick, and they suddenly called me to interview Vanna White and Pat Sajak, who were doing like the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune had rolled into Boston, and I was terrified, particularly because I was kind of in love with Vanna White at the time. So it added another element of nervousness to it. And I got there to the Wang Center and I found her and she was in her sequin dress and, slippers, house slippers and everything. And she said, well, let's do the interview right now. And, I was terrified. So she brought me into her like makeup room where she does her makeup. And I sat there on this little, this chair beside her while she put her makeup on. And I put my recorder down and we talked for about 45 minutes. And at the end of the conversation, I went to pick up my phone, my recorder, and
Oh no.
it had been on pause the entire
Oh
time.
no. Oh no.
And so I wrote a story about that. I had to turn it around, and I wrote the story about how I was kind of in love with Vanna and how this whole thing happened, and how in my first big assignment, my tape recorder was off the whole time,
Oh
and I had nothing
my
to
God, Chris.
report. But it came out really well. It came out really well. It was the cover of the magazine, and then they gave me more and more covers, and so I was there for maybe a year or so. Then I went to the New York Post for about 6 years, which was
Wait,
one of
before you go on, Chris, I just want to point out something that you said earlier
sure.
that I truly believe is like the secret to getting started in any business that you want is that you interned for them.
Yeah.
And I always tell people people want to work for me in events. They're like, how do we get started? How do we get work for you? And I'm like, volunteer for one of my events. Like, let me just see how you work. Let me develop a relationship with you. And then from there, the doors just start opening. And it sounds
Well,
like
and
what
I would
happened to
also
you.
say let the person see what really it is to run an event because you have this fantasy in
Yeah.
your head of what event
Exactly.
production is, and it'll
Yeah.
be like la la la. You'll see guests and you'll see celebrities, but you'll also be working.
Right.
So
Yeah.
being
That's
at a
so well.
paper, bringing coffee, doing whatever, answering phones, really gets
Yeah.
you to see what really happens here, and do you want to do it?
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I got an opportunity to go to the Post. So I moved back to New York where my parents live on Long Island. And I spent about 6 years there. It was probably some of the funnest times I've ever had in my life in journalism. I did all kinds of stories. They even, I was just thinking about this before we started. They sent me undercover to a debutante ball as like
Oh,
a
wow.
little rich young suitor.
Oh, my
And I
God.
went
Wait,
there and
did
it
you
was
say as a rich young suitor? That was your
yeah.
oh.
Yeah. I dressed up in a suit and everything like that, shot the shoes and all this stuff. And I went and you kind of stood in a line. It was like a cattle call. And the young girl and her mother would come up and they'd talk to you and you'd chat with them and everything. And I thought I was doing so well. I thought I, owned the room and everything. Nobody picked me. At the very
Oh.
end, nobody picked me. And so I wrote the story, which was so much fun to write. And next day in the Post, in the feature, full page story in 20-point type, dueling for Debs, how I got rejected by young rich girls.
You know, you know what
And,
I love about both those stories, Chris, is that you made them personal. And I feel like
Mhm,
that's what really draws people into stories and investigative reporting
mhm,
is sort of like putting your own personal spin on it.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case with feature stories, and I think that's the exact opposite with news stories.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I was hoping I could talk to you guys a little bit about this morning is sort of my philosophy on the news. This is, I love my job. I've been doing this my whole life, and I've worked for a lot of news organizations, and I really care about what I do. And I really think that with this new news site, I can bring my work to the forefront. And I don't even know where to go with this, but um, I want to earn the trust of the readers. That I think is the most important thing.
But also,
And
there are
in our
so many different stories to tell, right? So, how do you
right,
balance between, what's
absolutely.
fun, lighthearted, that people will enjoy reading, and then information that people need to have? Kind of, I don't even understand how to begin to, like, sort of write all of those different stories.
Well, they're different. It's like you're using different tools. Like
Mm-hmm.
with feature stories, I think feature stories are one of my favorite things to write. And I've learned from experience that for the most part, if I'm interested in something and I can present a story, a really well done story, other people will be interested in
Right.
it. And with feature stories like the feature story that I wrote on you guys, that was it was so much fun to write because I was so enthusiastic about what you're doing, and in some senses, it reminded me of what I'm doing.
Oh,
And so, feature stories is one thing. Like I'm also doing a feature story on 𝗕𝗲𝗰𝗵, who's the president of the Norfolk Audubon
Oh,
Society.
wow.
That story, idea came to me when I covered the Greenport Village election debate 2 or 3 months ago, and I had met Peggy as 𝗬𝗏𝗿𝗶𝗀 with you, Sunita, and I'd interviewed her for the first story I wrote on the polar
but yes,
bears.
I was going to say, you also wrote a story about the polar
Yeah,
bears.
exactly. And then I did a story on ice boating, and she was there, part of this ritual they do at the winter solstice every December 21st to try and induce ice, to freeze. They do all these kind of crazy things. They wear these Viking helmets and they sweep ice cubes into the bay.
Wow,
And
I didn't
I
know
got a
that.
picture from one of the ice boaters about this, and there, right in the middle, there's 𝗕𝗲𝗰𝗵. And then I did a story in the Norfolk Audubon Society, and there's Peggy and her husband Paul. She's everywhere, and she's just retiring now. She's also one of the foremost wine experts we have on Long Island.
Oh,
Her, 𝗕𝗲𝗰𝗵, some other folks. But I thought that the subject of her retirement would be a good place to sort of take a beat and profile her. And so I had lunch with her over at her house last week, and I had a great time. I'm still working on the story. I got 3, 4 interviews to do this today about it. But those are feature stories. That's one thing, and that is completely based on I think what I think is interesting and what my opinion is and how I feel about it and everything
Mm-hmm.
like that. When it comes to news, I think it's the exact opposite. I think it is absolutely vital, particularly now in this day and age, um, to prize objectivity. To be you're more of an umpire or an arbitrator than you are a participant. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times reporters today they feel the need to be participants in the story or to kind of put their spin on it. That's not me. I'm really an old school reporter who really, really, really prizes objectivity and prizes making sure that you're being fair because in almost every news story is based in conflict in one way or the other. It's either, it's a prosecutor indicting a defendant, or it's a neighbor having a fight with a business, or a resident arguing with the village board or the town board or anything like that. There's usually conflict involved, and it takes a lot of work to make sure that you really get to both sides and understand both sides. And your job is really to articulate concisely and accurately what their position is. It's not about me. And in that sense, I really think you got to stay out of the story, and it's not about you.
Right.
But then again, when you come to features, I think it's like my nose for what's interesting and the people that I find fascinating. I think that Peggy's I think she's like a gift to the North Fork. She participates in so many community things, and she's the kind of person like you here on NoFo Live. You want to spotlight the people behind these businesses, and I want to do the same thing. So I guess
that's
we're in competition.
awesome.
Gotta go. So
I
let's get.
So
know.
let me
We're
go
in
back
community,
to
Chris. We're in community.
Mhm.
so I think the first time I met you was at the polar bears, right?
Yep.
Because you
Mhm.
came to
Mhm.
do a story on the polar bears. Is that correct?
That's
If I'm
exactly
remembering
correct.
it correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk a little bit about that, writing that
Mhm.
story, and also your
Mhm.
experience of then literally plunging in and becoming a polar bear
Mhm.
after your first visit.
Mhm. Yes, that ended up being participatory journalism, but it didn't start out that way. I was having a really, really rough time in the fall of 2023. That was just when I first met you. I'm not to get too personal, but I know Tracy pride, being personal, but my father was dying. And that was a horribly, horribly difficult time for me. And I was having trouble just doing any kind of reporting at all.
Hmm.
And I remember so well going to the North Fork Polar Bears, and I was kind of half prepared to do it. But I just backed out at the
But
last
you really
minute.
came
And then I
to
thought,
do the story. But
yeah, I
you didn't
came
come to
to
plunge.
do
You
the
came to
story.
do the story, right?
Exactly. But I saw how healing it was, and I saw how happy everybody was. And you kept on saying, that's the person that turned me onto the polar bear. She's my drug dealer. The idea that, it's an addictive thing and that you get hooked on it. And you technically were my drug dealer in that because you were so enthusiastic about it. And there was somebody who came who only went in halfway, and there was every option was given to approach this
They are a
very,
very
you know,
supportive and encouraging group. And I
exactly.
find that, like you said, it is healing. And water calls you anyway,
Mhm.
once you're standing at the edge of the water, its healing properties call you. And you sound like you arrived. And also, just to remind everybody, that was in the middle of COVID, right?
Mhm.
I think that was it.
Mhm.
So there's that weight and the weight of whatever baggage each of us are carrying. When we come to the water's edge, we're back to children and we want to put our toes in it. The
Right.
only difference is in this case, it's ice cold, which I
Mhm.
think adds such a dimension of fear strength. Is like, if I can do this, the day that I plunge, when I walk out of that freezing cold water, I know if I can do this in the morning, what else can I do the rest of the
That's
day? You know, and
exactly.
it sounds like for that year, I know you then became a regular religious plunger that
Hmm.
went pretty much every day,
Hmm.
or at least as frequently.
That's absolutely right. And one of the things that was said to me at that day was with Patricia Garcia-Gomez, the little head of the North Fork Polar Bears.
Mama bear, she's a
She's
mama bear.
Mama Bear. She said it's healing. She kept on saying it's healing, and I kept on thinking, healing? It looks like hell. I don't want to be healed
It's
that way.
terrifying.
I
Yeah.
need to find another way to heal. But I couldn't get it out of my mind. And like you said, once you do that, the rest of the day, no matter what you're doing, is easy. And eventually, I got in, but it was really hard.
Well,
It was
and
really hard.
Chris, we all, the three of us all plunged at this year's cast
Sure.
big, plunge. And I remember you were one of the last people out of the water.
Yeah.
You are a diehard now.
Well, she was right. It is healing. It's
Yeah.
so incredibly healing, and that's what led to all through that fall and all into that winter. I went right here at Roanoke Point near where I live in Riverhead. I went almost every day, and it was truly a healing thing. And I would get into the water shaking like a junkie and say, heal me, And it was really healing, and I still love it. I don't do it as much as I did that year, so I don't have a lot of healing to do, but I still love it, and I'm going to probably go later on today.
Oh,
Nice.
okay. So
Well,
let's
today's
jump
a
into
great day
what
for
made
it.
you write. What made you write? Now that I know it's called the feature story, what made you write a feature story on us?
Oh, well, when I was working at Times Review, you've got a very small staff with a wide variety of outlets. We've got the North Forker, South Forker. They've got the North Forker, the South Forker, Suffolk Times, Shelter Island Reporter, and Riverhead News Review. So you're always kind of running all over the place. And most of the stories, I'll pitch and they'll accept. And sometimes you get assigned stories. And I'm pretty sure a woman named 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗀 assigned me that story.
Hmm.
And I said, sure, that sounds great. I'll go for it. And she was really patient with me through that time because it was a really hard time. But I thought it turned out to come out, it came out a pretty good story. And just went on from there.
Well, we enjoyed our lunch chat with you when you wrote our
So
story.
much.
That, to me,
Yeah.
the process of conversing with you was so fun.
Yeah.
Well, you're so interesting. You're both so interesting. You have interesting stories to tell. And that's the kind of thing that really excites me about journalism. It gives you, do you ever see the movie Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves? And Al
Yes.
Pacino's the devil. And
Yes. Yes. Yes.
this is not the best metaphor, but Keanu Reeves said, why law? And Al Pacino's the devil. And he goes, because it gets you into everything: politics, law, fashion, sports, music. And in that sense, I feel the same way about journalism. It gets you into everything. One day,
Yeah.
I'm trying to discern some complicated zoning change in Greenport, and another day I'm having lunch with you guys on the docks, and another day, every day is different, and you're always learning new things, and you're meeting new people, and you're hearing their stories. And I can't think of much like you, Sunita, I can't think of a better way to get to know a community than to really dive in and be a reporter.
Well, I would
But
also imagine it's similar to my career in events, where if you get to try a lot of different things, and you get to find out what you like and what you don't like, and you
Mhm.
also kind of get to choose, I don't want to do that anymore, I'd like to do more of this, which
Exactly.
not a lot of careers get to do. So you probably get to do that in writing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. For instance, with Norfolk Sun, which will be launching in a couple of weeks, I can't cover everything, but there are certain things that I think are really important to cover. For me, is obviously village government and town government. Those things are those are staples. And then I want to cover the features, and I want to cover the civic associations, and I want to cover the community events and the parades and everything like that. For now, I'm not going to get involved too much in the schools coverage or in high school sports coverage until I have, can scale up and hire a sports photographer and sports reporters. So I'm going to really kind of focus on municipal government and community, land use, environment, real estate, all the things that are important to us out here, out here in the North Fork. It's not going to be a place to argue national politics. I know a lot of newspapers, their letters to the editor are filled with sort of diatribes from, about political issues on the national front. If they affect us here, federal funding cuts, that are affecting the local communities, that's a story to me. But the bigger picture stuff, I think there's so many platforms you can find that on. I'm not going to focus on that.
Well, I
And
mean,
there's
the name you picked, North Fork Sun,
Yeah.
sort of indicates that your focus is the North Fork. So you've already
Mhm.
narrowed it down to that. And like Tracy
Right.
alluded, when you run your own business, after a lot of experience and trial and error, and you paid your dues, you're now able to focus on what you want in this chapter of your life.
Exactly. I mean, I probably have 14 or 15 stories going right
Uh,
now that I'm getting ready for the debut of the Sun.
well, speaking
So
of
tell
being
us
scary,
about it.
right?
Is it a digital? Is it
It's
print? Is it
digital for
both?
now.
Okay.
This is my plan. It's digital for now. I'm starting up basically on my own. I'm paying for everything myself.
Sounds like
Um,
our story.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But I'm going to debut well before Memorial Day. But from, say Memorial Day to the 4th of July, it's all going to be free, no ads, no nothing. I want a chance to, even though a lot of the people in the community already know me, I really want a chance to earn the trust and earn the interest of the readers. For me, the people I work for are the readers. That's my responsibility. When I'm covering a village board meeting or town board meeting, I'm thinking of the people who are reading the paper who are not at the meeting, who want an accurate,
Right.
fair assessment of what happened at that meeting. I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
That the readers is who you're working for.
Right.
And
But
you were
what was I
talking
saying
about
before that?
what your vision is for
And
North
the
Fork Sun. It's going to be
first
digital for
few weeks
now.
are going to be free, and then you're going to.
Oh yeah, right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. So I want a chance for people to see what I can do and see whether it's worth paying
I see.
money. And then I plan on 4th of July to go to a modest subscription model.
Okay.
And that's when I'll know whether this is going to be a sustainable thing or not. Is if I can garner enough readers willing to spend a small amount of money, definitely cheaper than some of the other news organizations out here. If they're willing to spend a small amount of money each month for my reporting, then I'll be able to sort of grow it and build it, or at least sustain it. And then on the other end, I've got some possible future plans where, I've had a couple potential investors approach me about investing in me. And in that case, I'd be able to scale up, hire people, potentially, put out an actual weekly print newspaper. But that's too far down the road. Like the first and most important thing I want to do now is build a site where anybody can come for free without signing up for anything and go through, see what I've got, see the reporting that I'm doing. I'm going to feature some of my drone videos, some of my favorite drone videos from my company, Sunset Beach Films, which was a side gig I did when I first came out here. I've contracted with some professional photographers who are going to do really great slideshows, and I'm working with a developer on the website to really make what I think, make the story really pop with big banner pictures
Mhm.
and really crisp, clean video, that people can enjoy. And then I'll have a whole section called the North Fork Voices, which is going to be an opinion column from somebody in the community on something every week, and then hopefully a robust letters to the editor section where people can call, people can write in
Wow, so you
and
have a
speak
whole
their.
plan. You have a whole vision laid out. Your entrepreneurial brain is spinning.
Oh yeah, I've been working on this. I was working on this for 2 or 3 weeks now, pretty much
That's
nonstop. And
awesome.
as it gets closer, I'm getting more and more excited. It's
Well, I have to say, when we and I don't know how Tracy feels, but I know that when we sat down to tell our story with you, not that I was afraid, but I guess I had no idea of what my words would then translate into and how you would interpret them. So that's the fear of, what am I saying? Am I making any sense? Am I even giving any valuable information to you? Right. But I have to say that when you sent me the link to the story that you posted to read, I was overcome with emotion, because I truly feel that in the article you wrote about us, you captured the
Yeah.
essence of who we are and what we're trying to do. So I thank you for that,
well,
because I
Yes.
think you took my crazy words and whatever, and really turned it into a beautiful piece.
Well,
well,
and you
that's
captured
exactly.
the essence of us and
Mhm.
the way our personalities interact with each other.
Well,
It was really
and
beautiful.
when the part, I think there was a sentence, and then obviously I'm going to butcher it, where you referenced or referred to us as sisters, which is really truly how I have
Mhm.
started to feel about Tracy. And
Mhm.
that, I think maybe that really just put me over the top. Um,
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's where the trust comes from. It's when I sit down with you, and you should be nervous if you're sitting down with a reporter, any reporter, anywhere. I don't do
Yeah.
it. I wouldn't recommend doing it unless you need to, but sometimes you need to. Um, but that's where like the trust comes in, and you build that trust literally one story at a time.
Yeah.
And I think I've done that to some extent with the work that I've done for the Suffolk Times, and I think I can take that to the next level with the work that I'm going to be doing. I think I can get my stories out faster. I think they can be more robust. I'm going to, like I said, put a lot more emphasis on pictures and
well,
video
you had
to really make the story
35
pop.
years of experience to back you
Mhm.
in what you want to do now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm lucky to have that experience. I'm lucky to have this opportunity to start this thing. It's a little nerve wracking. Of course, it
Yeah.
has to be this way. Some days I can't sit still. I'm so excited, and other days, it's the weight of the responsibility. I was out to dinner last night with a couple friends of mine who have a son in college, and I said, well, this website, like I can't, I'm so anxious for it to start. It's like having a baby. You can't wait for that baby to come, but the minute that
Oh
baby
my
drops
God.
line, your life is over.
Every
And
entrepreneur
constant
right now
care
can
and feeding.
resonate with what you're saying,
And
because,
every mother. And
Well,
every
oh,
no,
mother.
because my friend Claudia's response was, Chris, you don't know anything about parenting.
well, but I was going to say it's equal parts excitement and equal part fear, but that
Yeah,
equal, just like a seesaw, goes up and down. I know when I started
exactly.
my business, but that's when I think you're on the right track. As long as, like,
Yeah.
your passion is just oozing through. So then keep going. And it's never going to be a straight point from what you're thinking to where you want to go, but keep going and you'll get there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it was one of the things that you said, Tracy, really hit me. To me, it was the heart of that whole story that we did on you, was that you said you realized you were boating across the bay to meet your parents for lunch, like on a Tuesday in June.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking I had a moment just like that. I was in Mitchell Park. There was a program for the little kids where the Southold Police bring out all of their equipment, all their trucks and
Yeah.
their
Yeah. Yeah.
motorcycles and their drones and everything like this. And it was this beautiful morning in Mitchell Park. I was with Sharon Saylor and Arlene Klein, who it's escaping me at the moment what the event was, but it was basically, meet the cops
I think
and
this
see
is
what
like
they do. And
a junior academy or something that they do.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But
yeah.
it was a wonderful event, and the kids were thrilled, and I was thrilled. But I got to talk to the cops. I got to see their equipment too. But it was just one of those days when I realized like how lucky I am to be a reporter out here in the North Fork, and that's why I want to continue what I'm doing.
I
Yeah.
There's
think everybody should.
also I'm sorry. There's also some of the investigative reporting that I've done for the Suffolk Times. I'm trying to continue on here in my new iteration. In the meantime, between now and when I launched the site, I started a Substack blog. Basically, it's just a place for independent reporters to post the material, and
Well, which is
I had
where currently the feature that you wrote on us is, right?
exactly,
We'll
and
share
yeah,
the link for that for anybody that hasn't
yeah.
read it yet and is
Mhm.
interested.
And that will be republished again when the North Fork News goes live.
Yay.
Um, yes, in a week or two. But during the time while I'm planning this site and everything like that, I'm sure I've been covering. I've been doing some investigative reporting into Greenport Village officials, particularly Greenport Mayor. And one of the stories I wrote detailed how his driver's license has been suspended twice in 6 years and is currently suspended. And there's all kinds of allegations of mayoral overreach, et cetera, et cetera. So I was at a wedding a couple weekends ago. I got calls from 3 different people who said, "Hey, I read your story about the mayor. I just saw him drive by in a black Volvo," and one of them captured it on video. And so that's like one thing, okay? They say it's one thing. There's video. That's another thing. But I had already had a request into the DMV to confirm that his license remains suspended, and that was fulfilled on that Monday morning. And then I called the Shelter Island courthouse to find out if he'd mitigated, his violations, and he hadn't. So, I went overboard to make sure that I did not screw anything up because, along with the power you have as a journalist, there's a tremendous amount of responsibility
Yeah.
to get it
Of
right
fact checking.
and
Yeah.
to be fair. To be fair to people is more important to me than anything that I do.
Well, it
Um,
certainly doesn't sound like an easy job. I mean,
it's not
by
easy,
contrast,
but
it sounds like what Tracy and I are doing sounds easy because we just have to show up, make sure our phone has enough battery.
yeah, and you get your Instagram
And you get
gets
your
on.
Yes, and the
mascara
Instagram is
on before
Exactly.
you
updated.
post. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is. I mean, that is one of the ways that I want to distinguish myself is I want people to see how hard I work to get it right and to be fair. A perfect example, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. When someone's arrested, you should try get their side of the story. You should try and contact their lawyer or something like that. With the police blotter, it's just impossible with the number of arrests for DWI and everything. You can't track down every lawyer for every defendant. And I think that's sort of an unfortunate given in the news world. But when you got something bigger, like there was an indictment in Riverhead. There was a major RICO indictment for drug trafficking, and there were 6 or 7 Riverhead residents who were indicted. And I called every single one of their lawyers, and most of them didn't call back. That's pretty common, when you've got a defendant. Lawyer doesn't want to piss off
Like
the
you
judge. I
just
told them.
told everybody not to talk to a reporter. So
Yeah, right. Exactly. But I called all of them, and these were indictments by Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, who's a deeply, deeply engaged prosecutor and deeply experienced prosecutor. But and I love his spokesperson. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I know these people from working with them as a reporter for the Suffolk Times, and I like them, and I think they do really good work. That doesn't mean I trust them. So I call every single lawyer. Like if you got somebody who's been indicted in a RICO indictment, these are our neighbors. They've been indicted, but they haven't been convicted. And the least that you can do is at least try and get their side of the story. Most of them are not going to answer you. Most of them are, and so you'll never see that in the story. But I talked to one lawyer who said, "Hey, my client's been on a football scholarship at a college in the South for the last year. This is bullshit."
Right.
So I put that in the story, and it's important to kind of never trust anybody when you're doing news reporting, and you got to check out what they're saying, and you got to do everything you possibly can to give whoever you're writing about, if there are allegations against them, give them an opportunity to tell you the side of the story, because you'd be surprised at how many times they will, and it'll be different from the press release, if you know what I mean.
I think it's so important, Chris, what you're talking about, because too, like in today's Instagram world and online world, it's so easy. Someone says something and you're like, oh, well, they said it, you know, and
then
you
10
really have
people
to
shared
do
it, and 10 people shared it, so then it's true.
right,
Mhm.
right. And you really
That's
have to do
exactly what
your
I'm talking about.
homework and check who your sources are and know if you could trust them or not. Yeah.
And I want to be one of those people that you can trust, but I want to show it rather than tell
Right.
it. And that's why I'm holding off on charging money for anything for at least until the 4th of July.
Yeah. Well, we could talk to you all day, Chris, but I'm going to go ahead and kick off our NOFO Live. And I'm sorry that I keep looking over there, but there is a wasp that is in my office right now. And if I dive off of screen, that is why. Okay. I heard him at first and I was like, oh my God. Okay. Anyway, we already know the answer to this question. If you were going to take us out to lunch or dinner, where would you take us?
Today, I would take, because you told me it has to be like current, right? Today, I would take you to Barrow House.
Ooh,
I
I
love Barrow
just
House.
ate there yesterday.
Yes.
I was literally there
I go there all the time. I love their food.
I was just there yesterday, ate their curry bowl. It's still delicious for people who haven't eaten it in a while.
Right. First and South also. I love First and South in Greenport.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. When you're driving around trying to get people to answer your reporter questions, are you catching a sunrise or are you catching a sunset? And if so, what's your favorite spot?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Sunrise almost exclusively, because by sunset I'm exhausted. I'm up at like 4 o'clock in the morning usually.
Oh,
South Jamesport Beach is a great place. I'm just trying to think if that. I don't even know if I've got my
I think
suntimes right. I haven't done it
there's
in
a
a long
group of
time.
polar bears that plunge there.
Yeah, South Jamesport Beach. That's where I've got my kayak, or that's where I'm putting my kayak. Again, this summer I got a slip. I got one of the 12 slips. The Riverhead Recreation
Tracy,
Department.
that's close to the bay where you go with Poppy, right? And enjoy your random Tuesdays.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Brewery, vineyard, cocktail, mocktail. What do you enjoy and where would we see you?
High end, First and South. Low end, Cuddy's. Cuddy's is kind of like a dive bar down by it's down by the water in. God, please forgive me. I can't even think of it.
Is it on the North Fork?
Yeah. It's right near. I can't think of the 𝗵𝗂𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗵 Boulevard. You know,
By
𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗀𝗰
you,
Boulevard runs south.
Tracy. By you?
Yeah.
Oh, is it in that hotel? No, this is you.
No.
That's Bayview.
It's a tiny little dive bar, right off the water, just off 𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗀𝗃 Boulevard.
We're gonna have to go on a field trip,
Oh.
Tracy. We're gonna go. We're going on a field. Okay, you're taking us out there. Do they have food?
Yeah. No, they don't have food, but they have like bingo night and everything. And I was there one night, and you can tell it's a dive bar because I said, "Hey, man, this place is great. I'd love to do a story on you." And the bartender goes, "No,"
No.
because we don't want any attention. We don't want anybody here.
Wait, is it in South Jamesport?
Yes.
Like by the the post office over there?
Further south. It's all the way off. It's right on the water.
Okay.
Do they want us to know they exist?
No.
Oh,
But it doesn't matter.
Okay.
They're not watching this.
Okay, we're not tagging them on the
All right,
NOFO Live podcast. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Got
I
it.
forgot this is a tagging thing.
So when you're cooking at home, what farm stands do you like to frequent, and what do you usually get there?
𝗵𝗂𝗰𝗵 Farms, and it's all mostly like just fresh fruit and vegetables as opposed to cooking anything. I'm not a really good cook.
Okay.
I try. I air
They have
fry.
pies, so I'm just saying.
Well, that's part of it too. But yeah, they break corn. But that's easy. It's just a mile down the road from me.
Well, Chris, the North Fork is so lucky to have a reporter of such integrity, such as yours, on around us and reporting on us. But just tell us in one or two sentences why you love being a part of the North Fork.
Same reason that you do, because I get to cover something. I get to hang out with a bunch of little kids and cops at Mitchell Park on a June Tuesday.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I know that's a little bit of a retread, but
No,
I forgot
No.
about the five
no,
Yeah.
questions.
but you can't.
That's good.
Again, I can't drink enough of the North Fork Kool-Aid. There are so many
Yes,
tiny,
well
little,
said.
beautiful things that make life meaningful here. And if that's a meaningful moment for you, it really just shows that everybody can have their own individual, tiny little moment and feel the same joy of being here. You
It
know?
is. I want to get involved in sailing. I'm going to cover the sailing races and the regattas
Ooh.
this year. And there's the Wednesday night sailing where they sail. I think they race around
Yes,
Shelter Island,
Yes.
something like
Yes.
yes,
that.
yes. Right
Peggy
in,
told me about
right by
that.
Legends, right by Minnow,
Yeah,
New
Yeah.
that's
Suffolk.
what I want
Yes.
to do. I want to dive into that this summer. I want to get out on the water. I love it. I love being on boats and stuff. I've just never had one. So I'm gonna have to get some invitations by writing some stories.
Well, you could certainly go on Wednesdays and watch from the sideline because I
Yes.
have done that, and
Yeah.
bring a picnic. We'll
Yeah, yeah.
start there, and then we'll see who we can wave at and get on one of the boats.
That sounds great. That sounds great.
Oh, somebody's saying the South Hole Yacht Club teaches children sailing, so maybe you want to stop in there and
Yeah.
get some information. No, I need to
Yeah.
cover the children
Yeah,
sailing, not necessarily.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't. Thank you,
Thank
Chris. And like I
Hey,
said
my
before, we,
pleasure.
we really do appreciate your feature on us, and we'll share a link to it and also share a link to your new site when it's up and running. Tag us in it.
Wonderful. I'm
Can't wait
looking
to see
forward to
it.
it. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it,
Thanks,
ladies.
Chris.
Thank you.
All
Have,
right.
Happy
Bye
Friday,
have a
bye.
great
everyone.
weekend, everybody. We'll see you next Friday.
How do I
Bye.
leave?
Bye.